I never thought a single email could change everything. But that morning, when I walked into the office with my coffee and a smile, I opened an email that felt like a slap across the face. It was from the CEO himself, and the subject line looked almost harmless. Your annual bonus. I had spent the last 2 years leading a $5.7 billion project that everyone said was impossible. A project the CEO claimed would make the company legendary. A project he later called the miracle of the decade. And somehow, after all the nights I slept in the office, the weekends I skipped, and the family moments I missed, the company decided my bonus, my reward, should be only $100. At first, I thought it was a typo. I even laughed a little, waiting for a follow-up email. But nothing came. I refreshed the page again and again until the truth settled in my chest like a stone. It wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. A decision someone at the very top made with full confidence. A decision meant to humiliate me or cut me out quietly after I had done the work they couldn't do themselves. That's when something inside me shifted. I didn't get angry. I didn't yell. I didn't storm into anyone's office. I simply sat back in my chair and let the reality sink in. After everything I had built for them, this was how they valued me. $100. Not even enough to cover 1 day of meals during those long months of the project. And the CEO, the man who promised he would personally take care of me, was celebrating the project's success that very day with the board. I saw him walk in with that confident smile he always wore when cameras were around. He didn't even look my way. Maybe he thought I wouldn't say anything. Maybe he believed that I would accept what happened quietly, like just another loyal employee who doesn't question unfair decisions. What he didn't know was that months earlier, during the chaos of the project, I had discovered something he wouldn't want anyone else to know. And he definitely didn't expect I had set a trap that would activate the moment he crossed a certain line. I just never imagined I would need to use it, but that tiny figure typed in my bonus notification pushed me past my limit. It turned the trap from a silent safety net into a ticking bomb. I got up from my desk and walked through the hall, noticing how different everything felt now. The company lobby that once impressed me now looked cold and fake. The expensive art on the walls didn't look creative anymore. It looked like a distraction, a mask hiding something rotten underneath. And the CEO's office, the one that always seemed unreachable, didn't feel powerful anymore. It felt vulnerable. For the first time, I wasn't nervous walking toward it. I wasn't scared of what he might say or what he could do. Instead, I felt calm, almost too calm, like the kind of calm someone gets right before a storm starts. When I reached the top floor, I saw the board members laughing, glasses in hand, celebrating the project that changed everything. Reporters were already outside the conference room preparing for interviews. The CEO stood in the center like the hero of a story, taking credit for work he never even understood. He didn't know the project nearly fell apart 3 times. He didn't know his shortcuts almost cost billions. He didn't know the only reason the company survived was because someone in the shadows, me, fixed what he broke. And he definitely didn't know that the system he had praised publicly as the most transparent and secure architecture in corporate history had one tiny flaw. A flaw that only I knew existed. A flaw I had quietly attached to his digital approvals months ago as a way to protect myself if things ever went wrong. A flaw that recorded every unauthorized action he took during the project. Actions the board had no idea about. As I stood there looking through the glass wall, he finally noticed me. His smile faded for a split second, just a flicker, barely noticeable, but to me it said everything. He knew exactly why I was there. And he knew I had found out. He stepped away from the board members and walked toward me with that same controlled expression he always used during negotiations. "I hope you received your bonus," he said softly, pretending to be polite. I stared at him, wondering how a person could smile while doing something so cruel. "I did," I said. "Every last dollar." His eyes narrowed just slightly, realizing I wasn't reacting the way he expected. I wasn't begging. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I was simply steady, and that made him uneasy. He asked me to step inside his office so we could talk privately. But before I walked in, before I crossed that doorway, I remembered something important. Once I activated the trap, there would be no turning back. It would expose everything he had done, every lie he had told, every hidden move he made behind the scenes. It would destroy his career, his reputation, and everything he thought he controlled. And he deserved all of it. But even then, a small part of me wondered if pressing the final trigger was the right thing. Not because he didn't deserve consequences, but because once the truth came out, the entire company would feel the impact. Innocent people, too. Maybe that's what he counted on. My hesitation, my conscience, my sense of responsibility. Maybe that's why he thought I would never use what I knew. But he underestimated just how far he had pushed me. He underestimated the weight of 2 years of sacrifice. He underestimated how much pain one unfair decision could cause. He underestimated me. I stepped into his office, closed the door behind us, and sat down across from him. He believed he called me in to control the situation. He didn't know that the moment I sat in that chair, the trap had already begun. And in just a few seconds, something was going to happen, something he never saw coming, something that would change everything for him, for me, and for the entire company. I took a deep breath, looked him in the eyes, and said the one sentence that made the color drain from his face. But before I could finish saying it, something unexpected happened at the door. I barely had time to register the look on his face when the knock came. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut straight through the tension in the room. The CEO stiffened in his seat, his fingers curling slightly on the desk. For a second, neither of us spoke. It was strange how something so small, just a simple knock, could change the air so quickly. Maybe it was because we both knew that whatever was about to happen next wasn't going to be normal. Not today. Before he could answer, the door opened a few inches. One of the executive assistants peeked inside, her expression nervous, like she was carrying news she didn't want to deliver. She whispered something about a reporter asking to speak with him early. The CEO quickly dismissed her and closed the door again, a bit faster than necessary. The moment the latch clicked, he exhaled, long and controlled, as if he was trying to reset the entire situation. But he couldn't, not today. The trap was already active, the process already running. And now we were both sitting in the middle of it. He sat back down and stared at me, pretending to be calm. That was something he was good at, pretending. For years I watched him smile confidently in front of cameras, shake hands with investors, and talk in interviews like he was the one who built everything. Most people believed him. They liked his voice, his confidence, the way he looked like a visionary. But behind closed doors, he was different. He never understood the technical side of the projects, never cared about the people who kept the company alive, and never took responsibility when something went wrong. Everything good that happened was always his leadership. Everything bad was his team's failure. I used to admire him once. I won't lie about that. When I joined the company, I thought he was brilliant. I thought he saw something in me no one else did. He told me once that I reminded him of himself when he was younger, driven, sharp, willing to push boundaries. Back then I didn't realize he said that to everyone he wanted to manipulate. He leaned forward now, elbows on the desk, lowering his voice like he was about to share some great wisdom. "I know you're upset," he said, "but you need to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture." That was his favorite phrase. He used it to justify anything. Cuts, delays, layoffs, decisions that hurt people. Every time someone questioned him, he would repeat it until they gave up. But this time I didn't back down. "The bigger picture?" I repeated quietly. "You cut my bonus to $100. He didn't blink. "Budgets are tight. We had to make adjustments." I looked at him, keeping my expression neutral. We both knew that wasn't the truth. The company had just recorded one of its most profitable quarters. The board had approved massive bonuses for senior executives. Just last week, the CEO himself bragged about buying a vacation property overseas. And now he expected me to believe that my bonus, after handling a $5.7 billion project, had been reduced because of tight budgets. I didn't call him out directly. I didn't need to. The trap was already pulling the truth out piece by piece. I just needed him to keep talking. "What exactly are you trying to say?" he asked when I didn't respond. His tone sharpened slightly. He wasn't good at handling silence, especially when he felt his authority slipping. "I'm saying," I replied slowly, "that I know more than you think." His jaw tightened, and in that tiny moment, I saw it. The flicker of panic that he was trying to hide. That was the confirmation I needed. He knew. He knew the system recorded everything privately. He knew that if anyone found out what he had been doing during the project, the board wouldn't stand behind him. And he knew I had access to the only copy he thought was erased. But instead of facing it, he tried changing the subject, pretending he still had the upper hand. "You've been acting strange lately," he said. "Staying late. Accessing files you normally don't touch. Is there something you want to tell me?" I almost laughed. The irony of him accusing me of suspicious activity when he was the one hiding the truth behind the project was too much. But I kept my voice steady. "I'm just doing my job," I said. "The job I worked day and night to finish." He opened his mouth, but another knock interrupted us, this one harder, faster. Before the CEO could react, the door opened and his chief financial officer stepped inside. Her face was pale, her hands clenched around a tablet. She looked like she had just seen something she wasn't supposed to. "We have a problem," she said. The CEO straightened up instantly. "What kind of problem?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she hesitated, glancing at me for a split second. That was when I knew the first part of the trap had worked. She must have seen one of the alerts. Or the systems had started flagging inconsistencies tied to his approval logs. It was only a matter of time before someone found something strange. "Can it wait?" the CEO said, clearly annoyed. She shook her head. "No. You need to see this now." He shot me a look, the kind that said, "Don't go anywhere." Then he hurried out of the office with her. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the quiet room. I didn't move. I just sat there, listening to the muffled voices rising in the hallway. I couldn't understand the words, but I could hear the tone. Tense, confused, frantic. As I waited, I thought about everything that had led us here. The long nights, the stress, the problems no one else saw. I remember the moment during the project when I first discovered the CEO had overridden security protocols in the system. He wasn't supposed to have access to them. No one knew except him and me. And when I confronted him quietly back then, he brushed it off like it was nothing. "Just a shortcut," he said. "A small push to speed things up." But it wasn't a shortcut. It was a breach. A huge one. That was when I created the safety trigger. Not to blackmail him, not to use against him, but to protect myself. To make sure if something went wrong, the truth wouldn't disappear. I never expected he'd actually give me a reason to use it. But here we were. 10 minutes passed. Maybe 15. Then I heard footsteps rushing back. The CEO came in first, looking irritated but trying to appear in control. The CFO followed behind him, still tense. He shut the door and turned to me. "We need to talk," he said. I met his eyes calmly, waiting. "Did you access any of the internal security logs this week?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. The silence made him shift uncomfortably. "Just answer the question," he snapped. "I accessed everything I needed to finish the project," I replied. "Nothing more." He stared at me for a long second like he was trying to read my mind. He couldn't. He never could. "There are anomalies in the system," the CFO said softly. "Logs that don't match. Approvals that weren't supposed to exist. We don't know how they got there." The CEO shot her a look, warning her to stop talking. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice again. "Listen," he said carefully. "Whatever you're doing, it needs to stop. Now." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't agree. And that silence, that single moment, was enough to crack the mask he'd been wearing for years. He took a slow breath, trying to regain control. "Things can get very complicated if people start digging," he said. "Let's handle this quietly, professionally. You and I can work something out." He didn't realize the trap was still unfolding, spreading deeper into the system, pulling threads he thought he had hidden long ago. I leaned back slightly, my eyes steady on his. "What exactly do you think I'm doing?" I asked. He opened his mouth to answer, but the CFO's tablet beeped loudly, one sharp alert that froze both of them. She looked at the screen, and her face went white. The CEO snatched the tablet from her hand and stared at the display. Whatever he saw was only the beginning, and he didn't know it yet, but the next alert would be worse. The CEO kept staring down at the tablet like the numbers were betraying him. His fingers hovered above the screen, scrolling just an inch, then stopping again, as if moving too fast would make the situation worse. The CFO stood behind him, tense, her eyes flicking between him and me like she expected something explosive to happen. I didn't move from my seat. I just watched. He finally spoke, but his voice was lower now, almost like he didn't trust the walls anymore. This shouldn't exist. He turned the tablet toward the CFO, forcing her to look again, as if she could magically explain the impossible. She shook her head, swallowing hard. These logs, they're showing overrides from your login. But they don't match the timestamps you provided to the board. She said it gently, but the meaning wasn't gentle at all. The CEO's jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. He knew what it meant. Unauthorized actions tied to his name. Approvals he didn't publicly admit to. Files he swore didn't exist. If the board saw any of this, the celebration outside would flip into a crisis meeting within minutes. And he still had no idea how deep the trap had reached. I could see his mind racing. Not toward the truth, but toward damage control. He wasn't thinking about right or wrong. He wasn't thinking about the thousands of employees who trusted this company. He was thinking about himself, his power, his image, his future. It was the same mindset that got us here. He looked at me suddenly, sharp and suspicious. "You did something," he said quietly. Not a question, an accusation. He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with the same stare he used in negotiations. But it didn't work now. It only made him look desperate. "What exactly do you think I did?" I asked calmly. The more I stayed collected, the more it rattled him. He wasn't expecting confidence from someone he thought he could control. "You've been too calm through all of this," he muttered. "You knew something before we even walked in here." The CFO shifted uneasily, sensing the tension rising. She stepped forward. "Maybe we should bring in IT." "No," he snapped, cutting her off sharply. "We handle this ourselves." "She's the head of finance," I said quietly. "She has a right to know." He turned to her with a forced smile. "And she will. After I understand what's going on here." The CFO hesitated. She wasn't naive. She knew something bigger was happening. But she also knew the CEO wasn't someone who liked being questioned. Still, she didn't leave the office. She stayed right beside him, and that alone told me she wasn't fully on his side anymore. I didn't plan for her to become part of this conflict, but people reveal themselves during pressure, and I could tell she was starting to wonder what the CEO might be hiding. He turned back to the tablet, swiping through screens faster now, searching for a loophole he could use. But every time he opened a log file, it led to another inconsistency, another mismatch, another digital footprint he didn't authorize, and one he couldn't deny. Each one chipped at his confidence. He finally tossed the tablet onto the table, running a hand through his hair. "This could be a glitch," he said, almost to himself. "Some kind of syncing error." I raised an eyebrow. "A syncing error that created perfect records of every action you took off platform? Even ones from months ago?" My voice was soft, but it hit him like a punch. His eyes flashed. "If you think you can corner me." "Corner you?" I repeated. "I didn't create these actions." "You did." The CFO's eyebrows drew together as she looked at him. "Is that true?" He didn't answer, and that silence told her everything she needed to know. But this wasn't the moment the tension was supposed to break. There was still too much hidden beneath the surface, too many threads in this conflict. Before anyone could speak again, the office intercom buzzed. The CEO flinched. "Yes," he answered, voice tight. A voice from the front desk replied, "Sir, the board chair is asking for you. She says it's urgent." His eyes widened slightly. There was no way the board could know anything yet, unless something had spread faster than expected, or someone else had already noticed a discrepancy. The trap wasn't designed to expose the truth outright. It was designed to highlight inconsistencies until someone questioned them. And apparently, someone already had. The CFO looked at him nervously. "What should we tell her?" He didn't answer right away. He was stuck between fear and strategy. If he ignored the board, they'd get suspicious. If he went to them without a plan, they'd tear him apart. Somewhere in the background, the celebration outside the office was still going on, people cheering, cameras clicking. But inside this room, everything was slowly cracking open. He turned back to me, frustration simmering in his expression. "You need to stop whatever you started. This ends now." But he didn't realize something important. This wasn't something I could stop anymore. The trap wasn't a button I pressed. It was a chain reaction. Once it started, it kept pulling until everything reached the surface. "I didn't start anything today," I said. "The system is just showing the truth." He hated that answer. He hated the idea that he wasn't in control. He hated knowing something else, something he didn't build, was now dictating the pace. Before the argument could continue, the CFO's tablet buzzed again, this time louder, more urgent. She picked it up hesitantly, her face draining of color the moment she saw the notification. "What is it?" the CEO demanded. She slowly turned the screen toward him. He stared at it. Then his face went completely still. I didn't need to see the screen to know what it was. Phase 2 had begun. More logs, more inconsistencies. And this time, tied to financial approvals, budget transfers, quiet authorizations, hidden signatures, the kind of things the board would never forgive. The CEO looked at me like he finally understood exactly how dangerous this was, not just for him, but for everyone standing too close. "You don't know what you're doing," he whispered, fear leaking through his voice now. "You're going to tear this company apart." I met his eyes. "I gave this company everything," I said. "I'm just watching what was already broken finally show its cracks." Outside the door, another set of footsteps approached, the kind that moved with purpose. The kind that meant someone important was coming. We all turned toward the sound at the same time. And whoever was about to walk in would shift the entire conflict into a direction none of us were ready for. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. No one inside the office moved. Even the air felt heavy, like it was waiting to see what would happen next. The CEO straightened up fast, smoothing his suit jacket and forcing his expression back into something calm, something controlled, something that made it look like everything was normal. But no matter how he tried to fix his face, the fear still lingered in his eyes. The door opened slowly, and the board chair stepped inside. She was one of those people who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her presence alone carried weight. She took one look at the three of us, me seated, the CFO pale, the CEO stiff as stone, and her brows pulled together just slightly. She shut the door behind her, which was unusual. She rarely closed doors. She liked transparency. Today, though, things weren't transparent. "Not yet. We need to talk," she said. The CEO tried to smile, but it looked strained. "Of course," he said quickly. "I was just about to meet you." She cut him off with a single raised hand. "Not out there," she said. "Here." Her eyes shifted to me for a second, then back to him. She didn't ask me to leave. That alone told me she knew something wasn't right. She walked to his desk, put her tablet down, and turned it toward him. "Explain this." The CFO and I exchanged a glance, and the CEO hesitated before leaning forward. He didn't even touch the screen. He just stared at it. His face tightened. He recognized what he was looking at, another series of conflicts tied to his name. Only this time, these weren't small inconsistencies. These were major approvals, ones involving the $5.7 billion project. Ones the board took extremely seriously. He swallowed hard. "There must be some kind of system error," he said slowly. "These logs can't be correct." The board chair wasn't convinced. She tapped the tablet lightly. If this were just 1 or 2 entries, maybe. But this many, over the span of time. Her voice stayed calm, but the pressure behind it was unmistakable. "We've already looped in our compliance director. He says this pattern isn't random." The CEO stiffened. "You told compliance." "I had to," she replied. "They monitor anomalies. And these started showing up 10 minutes ago." The trap was unfolding faster than I expected. The chain reaction was no longer quiet. It was visible now, loud, undeniable. And the CEO knew it. He turned back to the board chair, trying to hold on to confidence. "Let me look into it before anyone jumps to conclusions. I'm sure there's a technical explanation." She crossed her arms. "Then explain why your credentials appear on actions you denied taking last quarter." Silence fell again. Tighter this time. The CEO glanced at me, not subtly, more like a defensive instinct. The board chair caught the look instantly. "What is going on between the two of you?" she asked. He opened his mouth, but I spoke first, calm, steady. "We're discussing the logs." The CEO quickly stepped forward, as if trying to shield the situation. "He's upset about his bonus," he said, waving a hand. "I think he's trying to create drama where there is none." You know how emotional people get about compensation. The board chair turned to look at me. Your bonus? She asked softly. I nodded. $100. Her eyebrows shot up in genuine shock. She looked at the CEO. You approve that? He chuckled weakly. Budgets were tight. A temporary adjustment. The CFO spoke suddenly, voice sharper than before. Budgets weren't tight. The CEO spun toward her, eyes wide. Stay out of this. But it was too late. Something in her had snapped the moment she saw the logs. She stepped closer to the board chair. He approved bonuses for other executives. Large ones. The board chair's expression hardened. That's interesting, she said, especially when tied to unauthorized financial movements. The CEO's face went white. You're twisting things, he said. None of this is. But before he could finish, another alert sounded. This one wasn't on the CFO's tablet or the board chair's. It came from the CEO's desk computer. A sharp, urgent notification. The CEO turned slowly, dread creeping into every line of his body. He tapped the screen. Then he froze. His eyes widened. His breathing stopped for just a second. The board chair moved closer. What is it? He didn't answer. So she looked herself, and whatever she saw made her step back. Her hand covered her mouth for a moment, then dropped as she exhaled sharply. She stared at him like she didn't recognize him anymore. This is serious, she whispered. Very serious. I knew what he was looking at. Phase 3. The part of the trap that reflected the full timeline, every hidden decision, every override, every quiet approval he thought he had erased. It wasn't exposing it publicly, but it was all appearing internally. Enough to raise alarms in every department that monitored compliance. The CEO tried to regain control. He slammed the laptop shut and faced the board chair. This is being misinterpreted, he said. We can fix this. We just need more time. We don't have time, she replied. Compliance and legal are already examining the alerts. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. Before you talk to anyone else, let me handle this. You know what happens when the board overreacts. She didn't back down. Overreact, she repeated. You've put this entire company at risk. He clenched his jaw, breathing through his nose. None of this would be happening if... He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked onto me. The board chair noticed. She followed his gaze and suddenly understood more than he wanted her to. What is he involved in? She asked the CEO directly. Nothing, he replied quickly. Then why are the anomalies appearing now? At the same moment he's in your office. He planned this, the CEO said coldly. He's sabotaging me. His voice echoed through the room, louder than before. But she didn't look at me with suspicion. She looked at me with curiosity and something close to concern. Is that true? She asked quietly. Did you cause this? I shook my head. I didn't create any actions in the logs. I didn't alter anything. The system is just showing what was already there. The CFO nodded slowly, backing me up. The patterns look genuine, she said. It doesn't look like manipulation. The CEO snapped. So now you're taking his side? I'm taking the side of the truth, she said. Another blow he didn't expect. The office temperature felt like it dropped several degrees. Pressure tightened around us. Everything was piling up, growing heavier, pushing everyone closer to the edge. The board chair took a slow step toward me. Is there something you haven't told us? She asked. Something about the project? About what really happened? The CEO's eyes widened. Don't say anything, he hissed. The board chair turned to him sharply. You don't control this conversation. The CEO opened his mouth again, but the office door burst open before he could speak. A junior compliance officer, breathing fast, clearly shaken, stepped inside with a stack of printed logs. Ma'am, he said to the board chair, you need to see this right now. The entire network is flagging high-risk anomalies. It's spreading across multiple departments. What departments? She asked. He hesitated. Legal, he said. Finance. Audit. And the project oversight system. The CEO's face collapsed. The board chair grabbed the papers, scanning the top sheet quickly. Then she looked at all of us with a seriousness that changed the atmosphere instantly. We have a crisis, she said. And we need answers. Her eyes locked onto the CEO. And we need them now. The CEO stepped back, cornered from every angle, pressure closing in. And just when it seemed like something had to give, another alert blared, the loudest one yet, and everyone in the room turned at the same time, just as the final warning flashed across the CEO's computer screen. And the truth, the part no one was prepared for, was seconds away from forcing its way to the surface. The weight of the moment hung in the air as Rehan stared at the new message on his phone, feeling the walls around him close in. The earlier clues had already shaken him, but this new detail hit even deeper, almost like someone was watching his every move in real time. The dim streetlights outside flickered, and the quiet hum of the city felt strangely distant, as if everything around him had paused just to let this tension grow. He tried to steady his breathing, but the unease crawled up his spine, reminding him that the main conflict was far from over. He stepped away from the window, replaying every conversation he'd had with Era lately. She had been calm on the surface, but there were tiny shifts in her voice, moments when she spoke too softly, moments when her eyes wandered as if she knew something she wasn't ready to admit. Rehan didn't want to doubt her. The trust between them had always been strong. But this second twist, this unexpected turn, had pulled him into deeper uncertainty. Even the keywords that had once felt powerful, truth, trust, discovery, now felt fragile in the face of everything unfolding. Era, meanwhile, was walking quickly through the narrow alley behind her apartment building. She held her bag close, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. She had discovered something too, something that connected directly to Rehan's fears, but she wasn't sure how to tell him without breaking everything they had built. She had found an old photo tucked away in a book that wasn't hers, and that photo showed a face she recognized from Rehan's story. Someone who wasn't supposed to be part of their lives anymore. Someone who had been missing for years. Her mind raced with questions. Who put the photo there? Why now? And what exactly did they want? She felt the tension rising inside her, the suspense tightening as she wondered whether she had unintentionally stepped into the center of the conflict. The city seemed quieter tonight. Too quiet, and even her footsteps echoed in a way that made her feel exposed. At the same time, Rehan received another anonymous text. This one wasn't a warning, it was a location pin. A place he knew very well. A place connected to his past. The sudden chill he felt was impossible to ignore. It was clear now that someone was pushing him toward this location on purpose, almost as if they wanted him to confront something buried deep in his memories. The story he thought he had left behind was resurfacing, piece by piece, dragging him closer to the climax he wasn't ready for. He grabbed his jacket and rushed out, unable to sit still any longer. The wind was stronger now, brushing against his face as he walked faster, the tension building with every step. The city lights blurred, turning into streaks as he focused on the path ahead. Everything felt connected somehow. The hidden photo Era found, the messages he received, the shadows from his past that refused to stay buried. As he neared the location, the second plot twist slammed into him without warning. Someone was already there waiting. He couldn't see their face clearly, but the silhouette was enough to make his heart race. This wasn't the person he expected. This wasn't even someone from his past. It was someone he thought belonged firmly in Era's world. And suddenly, the pieces shifted again. Era arrived moments later, breathless, holding the photo tightly in her hand. When she saw the figure standing in front of Rehan, her expression changed. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The connection between all of them was suddenly, painfully clear. This revelation didn't answer anything. If anything, it only raised the stakes. It made the truth feel even further away. Suspense wrapped around them like a tightening rope, pulling the audience deeper into the conflict while resisting any hint of resolution. The night around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Rehan felt his heartbeat thundering in his chest as the shadowed figure stepped closer, the dim streetlight finally revealing their face. It was Samir, Era's older cousin, the one she barely spoke about, the one who had disappeared from the family years earlier without explanation. The shock hit both of them at the same time, and for a moment no one knew what to say. The night air felt heavier now, filled with unspoken truths and long-buried secrets. Era tightened her grip on the old photo, her fingers trembling slightly as she tried to understand why Samir had returned after all this time. Samir raised his hands as if to calm them, his voice low and steady. He explained that he had been watching from a distance because he feared the same danger that now surrounded Rayhan and Era. He hadn't vanished because of the family drama people whispered about. He had been forced to disappear after discovering the truth behind a powerful business group that had been manipulating evidence, tracking certain individuals, and silencing anyone who got too close. Rayhan suddenly felt the pieces of his own past snapping into place. The strange messages, the location pin, the warnings, it all connected to the same group Samir was talking about. Keywords like truth, mystery, and conflict suddenly took on a sharper meaning. Era stepped closer, her voice shaky but firm as she asked why the photo had been hidden in her book. Samir told her he placed it there on purpose. He wanted her to find it, but only when he knew she was ready to face the truth. The man in the picture wasn't a stranger at all. It was Rayhan's father, taken years before he disappeared. Rayhan felt the ground shift beneath him. For so long, he believed his father's vanishing was a closed case, something tragic but unsolvable. But Samir explained that his father had been investigating the same group Samir got entangled with, and when he got too close to exposing their secrets, he was taken. The tension built to its highest point as Rayhan realized everything he'd been avoiding had been leading to this moment. Samir reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. This was the proof Rayhan's father had gathered: files, recordings, dates, names. It revealed everything. It was the kind of evidence that could finally expose the truth and break the cycle of fear that had stretched across years. Rayhan took the drive, feeling a mixture of relief, sadness, and determination. Era squeezed his hand, grounding him in the moment. But just as it seemed the conflict had reached its resolution, a sudden click echoed behind them, a sound that made all three freeze. Rayhan slowly turned to see a figure standing only a few steps away, holding a phone aimed at them. It wasn't a weapon, but it didn't need to be. The stranger smirked, saying they had already uploaded the flash drive's contents to a private server before Samir arrived. They had been following Samir too, always staying one step ahead. The files were real, but the stranger claimed there was a second version, one that twisted the evidence to frame Rayhan instead. And that version was ready to be released to the world at any moment. The twist struck like lightning. Even though the truth was now in their hands, someone else held the power to twist it into a lie. The stranger walked away confidently, disappearing into the dark before any of them could move. Samir cursed under his breath, realizing the danger wasn't fully gone. Era looked at Rayhan, her eyes filled with worry but also strength. Rayhan tightened his grip on the flash drive. He finally had the answers he needed, but the final twist reminded him that some battles didn't end in one night. Still, the main conflict had reached a powerful breaking point. Rayhan wasn't lost anymore. He knew what his father had fought for, and now he understood what he needed to do. As he and Era walked away from the empty street, the night felt different. Not lighter, not safer, but clearer. The truth was finally out, and even though a new shadow hung over the ending, the path forward was no longer hidden. And somewhere in the distance, unseen and silent, the stranger watched them go, already planning the next move. Rayhan barely slept that night. Even though the flash drive lay safely on his desk, his mind kept spinning with everything he'd learned. The truth about his father, Samir's disappearance, the powerful group working behind the scenes, and the stranger who had walked off with a twisted version of the evidence, it all mixed together in a way that made the room feel smaller, even with the lights on. Era stayed on a video call with him until almost dawn, refusing to leave him alone with his thoughts. Her voice kept him steady, reminding him that no matter how heavy things felt, he wasn't carrying everything by himself anymore. That thought alone gave him the strength to take the next steps. When the sun finally rose, Rayhan met Samir at a quiet cafe far from the city center. The place was mostly empty, and the few customers kept to themselves. Samir had already ordered tea for both of them, and he looked tired, like a man who had spent years watching shadows move. He apologized again for staying away for so long, explaining that the only way to protect Era and the rest of the family was to cut off all contact. Rayhan could see the guilt in his eyes, but for the first time since meeting him, he also saw hope. That hope came from knowing Rayhan was willing to fight the same battle his father started. They talked through every detail on the flash drive, making sure they understood how much truth it held. It had proof of financial manipulation, hidden deals, and the exact timeline of the big project that had cost Rayhan his bonus. It also included messages from Rayhan's father, some recorded right before he disappeared. Hearing his father's voice again felt like a punch to the chest, but Rayhan listened anyway. His father spoke about protecting the future, about not letting fear destroy what he believed in. It wasn't just evidence. It was a message meant for him. When Era joined them, she brought her laptop and her determined energy. Together, they worked through a plan, not for revenge, but for exposure. They knew that going straight to the authorities could be risky if the stranger released the fake files first, so they needed a different approach. Era suggested something simple but powerful: transparency. If they shared everything openly, with context and proof, the twisted version wouldn't have room to spread. They would tell the story themselves, with clear evidence, dates, voices, and facts. Over the next few days, they prepared everything. Rayhan reached out to a few trusted journalists, people known for digging deep and refusing to bow to pressure. One journalist, in particular, listened carefully to his story and agreed to help verify the data on the flash drive before publishing it. Meanwhile, Samir kept an eye out for any signs of a stranger, but there were no messages, no warnings, no sudden uploads online. It felt strange, like the threat had paused on purpose. But instead of letting fear build again, Rayhan focused on the truth. The keyword was integrity, and he repeated it every time doubt crept up. One night, as Rayhan sat with Era on her balcony overlooking the quiet city, he finally asked what had been sitting in his mind since everything began. He asked her if she regretted getting involved. She shook her head instantly, telling him that truth mattered more than comfort. She reminded him that he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for his father, for Samir, for everyone who had been silenced. Her words settled the last piece of fear in his heart. He realized that strength didn't always come from standing alone. Sometimes it came from letting the right people stand beside you. When the article finally went public, it spread faster than any of them expected. The journalist had published a full investigative story with proof, voice clips, and cross-check details. The truth about the $5.7 billion project, the hidden deals, and the people behind the manipulation became impossible to ignore. For a full day, the media exploded. Analysts, reporters, and even former employees started speaking up. Messages came pouring in, some supportive, some cautious, some from people who had been scared to tell their stories until now. Rayhan watched the responses with mixed emotions. He felt relieved, proud, and still a little afraid. But something inside him felt lighter. It was the first time he felt like he wasn't trapped under a weight he couldn't understand. The stranger, however, didn't stay silent forever. The day after the article was published, Rayhan received an anonymous email containing a single sentence. "You moved faster than expected." But instead of a threat, it felt like a surrender. No fake files were released. No drama followed. Maybe the stranger wanted power, not destruction. Maybe they had underestimated Rayhan. Or maybe they realized the truth was now too exposed to twist. Era saw the email too and squeezed Rayhan's hand. She told him he didn't need to reply. The silence from their enemy wasn't a sign of danger anymore. It was proof that they had already changed the outcome. Samir, finally free from years of hiding, returned home to his family. The reunion wasn't dramatic or filled with grand speeches. It was quiet, emotional, and healing. Era hugged him tighter than she ever had before, and he promised never to disappear without explaining again. As for Rayhan, he took time to rebuild his own life. He didn't return to the company that gave him the $100 bonus. He didn't need to. New opportunities came from people who respected his courage. But before taking any offer, he visited the old storage room where he first found the beginnings of his journey. He stood there in the stillness, remembering his father's voice. He whispered a promise aloud, one that felt like the true ending of everything he had carried for years. He promised to live in a way that honored truth, not fear. In the weeks that followed, Rayhan and Era grew even closer. Their shared struggle created a bond that felt steady and honest. They laughed again, traveled again, and enjoyed simple things that once felt distant. Every now and then, someone would message Rayhan about the article or thank him for speaking up, and each time he felt grateful, not for the attention, but for the chance to make something right. One evening, months later, Rayhan walked through the city with Era beside him. The streets were calm, the lights soft, and the world finally felt normal. He realized something important. The story didn't end with victory or revenge. It ended with understanding. He had learned that even in the darkest situations, people matter more than power. Trust matters more than fear. And truth, when protected and shared, can shape a future stronger than any secret. As they crossed the road, Era nudged him playfully and asked if he ever thought he would come out of all this stronger. He smiled, looking at her and then at the skyline ahead. He told her that sometimes life gives you battles you never asked for, but the way you fight them defines who you become. Rehan had fought with honesty, courage, and the help of the people who believed in him. And because of that, he didn't just uncover the truth, he stepped into a future where he finally felt free. The story ended not with fear, but with clarity. Not with revenge, but with growth. And as Rehan walked forward, he knew the truth would always guide him, no matter what came next.